Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Paint with Jim. Glad that you're here, and I hope you're ready to paint along. I'm going to go through a materials list of what I'm going to be using so you can pause, get everything ready that you'll need. But let me just show you really quickly and maybe just take a couple of minutes and explain what it is that we're going to do, and then we're just going to jump right in and get started. So the name of the painting that we're going to do is called Forest Path. Forest Path. And the color for the painting, this is where your artistic side can come out, because the final colors of the painting are really up to you. Because we're going to do what they call glazing. We're going to glaze colors over the top. We're going to do the initial painting in a grayscale, black, white, gray, shades of gray, and then glaze color over the top of that. So you can pick whatever colors that you like. I'm going to show you a couple of versions of the painting. So there is the painting, and believe it or not, it's super simple, and so it'll go relatively quickly. And if you like texture and all of that kind of stuff, you're going to like this painting, because you can really get this down here as textury as you like. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways maybe to do this light in the back, the trees and all of that, but you can see a couple of different versions there. Again, the final color is up to you. I'm going to set one of these off to the side so I can have it as a reference, and then the other I'm going to just kind of explain to you again that what it is that we're going to do. As I mentioned, we're going to do all of these trees, the light in the background, the bushes, and all of that in the front, the path, all of that is going to be in shades of gray, from the black to white, and then a couple of shades of gray in between. And you can see I'm starting with a black canvas, and all I've done to get the canvas black is just I painted this one black. You can purchase black canvases if you want, but I've just painted this one black, and I used a black gesso, and I picked this up from Hobby Lobby, and it's got a $3.99 price tag on it for an 8-ounce container of black gesso. And then the other thing that I'm using is a white gesso, and this one just happens to be a heavy body made by Liquitex. But you can use just black and white. If you have the Liquitex Basics black and white, that'll work. Just regular black and white acrylic paint. But let me show you what I've got, is what I've done as far as getting prepared here. I've got, of course, the black, the white, and then I've done a light gray and a dark gray. So let me kind of get you zoomed in here. From white, light gray, dark gray, and black. That's what I'm going to use as far as the shades of gray for all of the painting until we get to the end and get ready to put color on. You're going to need, of course, your normal acrylic painting stuff. You'll need some water off to the side. You're going to need some paper towels, and those kinds of normal things, a plate to put your paint on and put your brushes on, as we're using the different brushes. And you have a couple of different options for the light that's going to come through the trees from the background. There's a couple of different options. You can use a sponge, and these are very inexpensive at places like Michael's and Hobby Lobby and those kinds of places. This is just a piece of natural sponge that I've torn off from a bigger chunk there. You can get this damp. You will have to dampen these, or you can just use a paper towel. And again, maybe just dampen it just a little bit. You don't want water to be able to wring water out of it, but just get it damp a little bit. All I did is just touch a corner there in some water, so the paper towel has some dampness to it, and then just scrunch that up and just use the texture of the paper towel. So again, that's the least expensive option, right? The paper towel. And I think that's what I'm going to go with. And then the rest of the brushes, I'm going to do, I've got this 3/4 inch. You've seen me use this brush before. It's a 3/4 inch, kind of stiff nylon brush. I'm going to be using that. And then you can really, I'm a fan of using what you have as far as brushes. So let me just show you some options here as far as, I'm going to use a liner brush. This is a natural hair liner brush. That's the one I'm going to use just because I have it. I also have a synthetic liner brush, a nylon bristle synthetic brush. It doesn't hold as much water, and to me it doesn't flow as well as the natural hair. But you could also use, if you have a thin round brush. So for doing, let me grab the reference painting again. So for doing all of these limbs and branches that are coming off here, these skinny lines that we're going to make, you can use any of these types of liner brushes. Any brushes that you have really will work. If you have a sponge, you could use that. Paper towel, you can use that. So let's get started. I'm using black canvas. This is a 16 by 20, and I've got it mounted in portrait. So it's the 20-inch side here, the 16-inch side here, and have it mounted in my easel. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this, and I really hope you'll follow along. This is a fun painting and a fairly easy painting to do. And again, my rule for painting is have fun. So that's the only rule that we have here, Paint with Jim, is just to have fun. So here we go. I'm going to start, and we have to kind of determine where our main light source will be. I'm going to put mine about here. And so what I'm going to do is apply the paint, and I'm just going to use the paper towel, go right into the white paint, and just dab it on. And as you work out, you can see the paint will get lighter and lighter, and that's exactly what you want to see. So I'm going to use a circular motion, starting from the center of this spot here, which is my lightest and brightest. You can make this as bright as you want just by going back and adding some more white to it. And then as you work out in this circular motion, you'll see the paint will get fainter. It'll get lighter and lighter. There'll be less paint, which in this painting equals less light. So this will be our main light focused here. And then as we work our way out, it gets less and less bright. Okay? So I'm just going to work on that for a couple of seconds here. And again, you don't want to take a lot of time doing this. Just dip into a little bit of your white, and if your canvas is bouncy too much, you can push in on it with your finger. I've showed you that before. And then just kind of work out. And it's okay if it's splotchy. That's kind of what you want. Once we paint the tree limbs in, it'll look really nice. So I'm just working my way around here, and we do want to come down probably about 2/3 of the canvas. A little more is not going to hurt anything, because we'll paint over anything that if we don't like the look, we can just paint over it, or if it's too far down, we can just paint over that. And again, I'm just using the paper towel. If you want to use a sponge, you can. And I know you're saying, man, that just looks like a mess. But you're right, it kind of does, but that's part of the fun of this. You do want kind of a gradation, and I hope the camera, I won't really know until I get ready to edit this, but I hope the camera's going to pick this up okay. You do want kind of a gradation, so from bright and then get duller and duller and duller as you move out. So that's what I'm going to try to accomplish here. And again, just crumble up the paper towel, turn it all different directions. And you'll see this will really come together once we get ready to put all of the trees on here and all of that stuff that we're going to put in, from the background to the foreground trees to the path. Man, it's just, this really is a nice painting to do. Let me switch over and kind of show you a little bit of this with the sponge, for those of you that might be interested in that. All I've done is just taken the sponge and just got it wet and then dunked it in the water and wrung it out really well. And I can go right into some of the white there. And again, the sponge works really well for this also. So if you have a sponge, you can do that. And notice I'm turning it in different directions because the different, and you want a natural sponge just because it has this irregular surface, and it's really great for doing stuff like this. So again, the paper towel or the sponge, either one is fine. And I've got that heavy-bodied gesso that I'm using, so I've got to use a little more water. If you're using just straight acrylic paint, then you won't have to worry about that too much. Alright, let me go ahead and maybe just push this part into time lapse, because this will take a few minutes to get done here, and then I'll bust this into time lapse and then be back with you as soon as I have this done. Okay, so you saw me in time lapse. I finished off, just continued to use the sponge. I showed you with the paper towel and with the sponge. If you're using the sponge, when you get done with that, you can just throw it, if you got a bowl of water, and put it in there. You don't want the paint to dry in the sponge. You'll have to wash that out later. But regardless, what you wanted, and you also saw me go back and brighten this area up a little bit, and then you saw me pull out the blow dryer, and I dried this really well. This is all dry. And I also stepped back. I don't know if you noticed that, but I stepped back and kind of looked to make sure that I was happy with where my light was going to be focused. So grab the reference painting again, show it to you. So basically what we've done, if you look kind of behind this big tree here, that's one of the last things we're going to put in. But if you look behind there, you see this light kind of coming through the trees. That's where this is going to come from. So we'll kind of keep that in mind when we go to paint in some, especially this big tree in the front, because we want some of that light to come through. So that gives us all of this light that's in and behind these trees. It's kind of a backlit type of painting, and this gives us that effect. So next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take a 3/4 inch brush. You use what you have available, and I'm going to use a combination of my dark gray, the light gray, and the white, and I'm going to paint in some background tree trunks and then give the start of maybe some branches and that sort of thing. And we really want a lot of that back in here, and we're going to bring all of these down, and I'm going to show you how to paint a couple of them, because it's important to get the proportions for your trees correct. And the other thing you want is, you don't want, and hopefully you've been out and walked through, done hiking and other things, and seen a lot of trees and all that, you know they're not straight like telephone poles. They're all kinds of shapes. So as you're doing this, you want to vary your shapes and sizes and all of that. We don't want to get too big because we're going to have a real big tree in the front here, kind of be the focal area of our painting. But we do want to vary the size and shapes and directions and all of that. So let me show you what we're going to do here. I'm just getting a little bit of water on my 3/4 inch brush. And we're going to start with the darkest gray in the center area. And then the lighter shade of gray in this area. And then we're going to use white on the very outside. So it'll be white, the lighter gray, the darker gray, the lighter gray again, and then white again on this side. So I hope that makes sense to you. You're going to watch me paint it, so it'll make sense hopefully as we're going through. Again, a little bit of water on the brush here. And I'm going to start from the center, and I need to, my paint is getting a little dry here, so I've just got a mister bottle here, and this is one of the super fine, ultra fine mister. And if your paints start drying out on you, just mist them over the top like that, and that'll keep them workable. So I'm just going in again, kind of working this to a chisel edge here with the dark color. And you could start, if you wanted to start with the lightest, you could work your way from light to dark and then light to dark in the middle. I'm going to just start in the middle with the darker gray and work my way out. I don't know. That's just the way that I painted it the couple of times that I painted it. So that's probably not, since I'll have to clean my brush to go to the lighter colors. But anyway, I'm going to try it. So here we go. We're going to take these all the way off the top of the canvas. So I'm actually going to start at the top, and I'm going to start straight on with the brush. And as I come down, I'm just going to apply more pressure. I'm going to push in a little bit harder with the brush, and that'll make the trunks larger at the bottom. And again, we're going to come down to about, we're going to cover about 2/3 of the canvas. So down to about right here. You see I brought this down a little bit further. That doesn't hurt anything. So here we go. I'm just going to start doing these. And again, you can vary your colors. Like I said, I'm using 2 types of gray and a white. If you wanted, you could make something a little bit darker. And it does not matter if these are perfect, but you could vary your colors to even give more shades of gray, just to add more depth and variety to your painting. And you want to overlap and have different sizes and shapes. Again, starting at the top, and as I come down, pushing harder to get. And down here, we're going to paint over this, so don't worry about this bottom edge. Just bring these down so that they fill up. And you want to do a good amount of these, just so it just looks like you're in a forest and just full of trees everywhere. And again, just have to vary your shapes and sizes and, cross things and all of that, because you see that everywhere. All different shapes and sizes, and nature is not symmetrical. So the hardest thing for us sometimes as artists is to not have things look like they're in a row or the same shape, or to vary things becomes difficult sometimes. If you get one, I kind of had one there that was kind of scratchy in the middle. Don't worry about it at all. If you want, you could go back and touch it up. But you're better off just doing these really quick. So if you can, and again, I'm just take what I'm doing with my brush here. Let me kind of show you on the plate here. I'm bringing it to a chisel. So I'm going into the paint, kind of working both sides, and that brings the brush to a chisel. And then I start at the top with that chisel and just work my way down. You're better off just hitting it fast and doing it and not trying to make everything perfect. I'm going to move on, and because we're going to put even some thinner lines in here with our liner brush in just a second. But I'm going to move on and do some of the lighter gray. So again, it's the same process. Take the lighter gray and as much water as you need on your brush to make the paint flow. My paint's pretty sticky right now, so I'm mixing in some water to kind of help with that. So again, you want I've got a lot of paint gooped up on my brush there. So again, kind of bring it to a chisel, and you'll see this is a lighter color. And that's what we want to see. That might actually be a little bit too light. Let me put a little bit more black in with that. Change that color just a little bit, maybe help it be a little bit better. Darken it up just a touch. Can you see that? I just put a little more black in with it. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, there we go. And again, you want these shapes to vary in size, in thickness, in direction, both sides of your darker color. You could have a little bit of overlap if you wanted. That wouldn't hurt anything. Then just add a little more interest to the painting. And again, you can see I'm not being very careful. I'm not really worrying about, if the part of the line is broken or anything like that at all. I'm going to bring one across almost like it's really leaning there. Maybe do a similar thing on this side. Again, just try to make interesting shapes, interesting lines. Rinse my brush out again. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the white color, and I'm just rinsing the brush. I'm not really cleaning it, so it might have a little bit of gray in it still, but I'm not at all going to worry about that. So you can see I've just rinsed it, pulled it through a paper towel, and that's all I'm going to do. Now I'm going to go in to just the straight white and just do the same thing on the outside of the canvas here. Again, just as much water as you need to help the paint flow. If you're not able to make a line like that, then you need to add a little bit more water so your paint flows better. If you get halfway down and you don't have any, your paint kind of stops, then you don't have enough water mixed in with your paint. So again, the forest goes, so we want it to look that way. I'm going to actually bring kind of some off side of the canvas, and you can overlap a little bit. You want to go all different directions. Again, I don't know if you saw that stroke right there, but it really, the paint didn't go very far. It's because I didn't have enough water. And that one was a lot better. And you'll see how this all comes together when we start putting the color on top. It really makes everything just kind of pop and come together. If you get a spot you don't like I just did right there, you can wipe it with your finger. It'll come right off. Again, don't want to take a lot of time. Just kind of want to do these, get in and out, put your lines in, and we're going to come back with a smaller brush and essentially do the same thing. So you can see we've got a lot of lines in there. You could take this 3/4 inch brush and give the indication, if you wanted, some branches kind of going up and out. Again, all different directions. If it's something you don't like, wipe it with your finger, comes off, and you'll be fine with that. Again, this we don't really need to be all that worried with. You can have some shorter ones in here, look like maybe something's broken. Oop. Didn't like that at all. I'm actually going to take a damp paper towel and kind of wipe that because I didn't like that at all. Let me see if I can't do something better in there. But see, you can always go back and correct your mistakes. We could also let that dry and paint over it if we want. Let me pull something through there just to kind of help that look a little better. All right. So yeah, you could, if you want, you could put a lot of the thin lines and branches in with just the tip of this 3/4 inch brush. It actually does a pretty good job of making some thin lines if you bring it to a point. So we can pull all of these, and again, more is better in this particular painting with these lines that look like branches. Again, we need to do this with all the colors, so I'm going to rinse a little bit of the white, kind of work backwards. If you want to view it that way, I'm going to work my way now from the lighter to the darker, and I am going to use this 3/4 inch brush and put some of these thinner lines in through here. Can you see that? And remember the acrylics, see that I put that on and it looks a little bit different color? The acrylics always dry a shade or two darker, so as you're working with your acrylic paint, you have to keep that in mind as you put something on. It's always going to be a little bit darker than when it first goes on. And that I've learned that now. That doesn't really bother me, so because I've learned that enough over the years that I've painted that doesn't really bother me. You can see how much I'm filling up the space, and you really want to do that. Let's see, I need to do a little bit of that color. This is again the lighter gray, so I've gone from the white back to the lighter gray color and put some of these lines, branches in through here. And again, just notice how I'm filling up the space and overlapping the colors. Now I'm going to go to the darker gray color. Pull some of those lines through with the darker gray color. Again, kind of show you how I'm doing that there, just pulling the brush to a point. And again, this brush, if you get the right amount of moisture on it and get the paint thin enough, you can make some pretty thin lines even with this 3/4 inch brush. So I am going to come in and do some with the liner brush so you can see how that goes. But for now, I'm just trying to get kind of some similar size lines and all of that. Again, more is better than less, because if you look at a tree there, I mean hundreds and thousands even of branches on a tree. So there's really no way, I mean, I guess somebody could if you painted the entire canvas, but there's really no way you can overdo this unless you just made the canvas solid color. All right, so I'm going to just, you know the drill on this, wet the bristles of the brush that I'm using. I'm just going to lay it on a plate over here, and I'm going to grab my liner brush. Again, if you have a round brush, you could use that. I'm just going to use a liner brush, and really want this to be a fluid excuse me, a fluid paint. So a lot of water on the brush into the paint, spinning it. See how I'm spinning the bristles around? If you're going to use a liner brush, you kind of better maybe practice this. I usually pass out, if we're doing paint party here at the house, I'll pass out like a palette paper, and that way people can practice before they put strokes on their canvas. But if you roll this in the paint, it loads a lot of paint in the brush, and it makes a very fine line. So we can come up and you can see how I can do these fine lines. So I'm just going to use this liner brush. Again, I'm going to go through the colors, kind of bring up, again, there's twigs and branches and all kinds of stuff. If you go into the forest, you'll see that, or go hiking in the woods and all of that. You just kind of go off your memory of what you see here, and you want to have some of these lines fairly thin, and other ones you can come off and make it look like there's a branch. You see me using my finger there. That one just a little bit too bright, so all I did is just barely touch it, and that softened it up. So I'm going to come off here, off of the side of this branch, and kind of bring a branch out this way, and you see me kind of wiggling my brush and moving my brush in all different directions. When you can do that with the liner brush, you've got the right amount of paint and moisture in the brush, and it'll make some good marks there. So let's do that again this way. And again, just lots of random lines, and thin and thick. And now remember, trees are always skinnier at the top than they are at the bottom, so you kind of have to keep that in mind as you're doing your random lines. If they're up here, they're going to be a lot thinner than they need to be down here. All right, so there's some of the white on that side. I think I did this side already, and then I can do a little bit more. Again, I'm just barely touching the canvas, so filled that in. Let me do a little more of that with, I'm going to use the lighter gray. Remember, using at least two different shades of gray. If you want to use more, feel free. I'm using two different shades of gray, a light gray and a dark gray. Right now I'm running the liner brush. Again, a lot of moisture, rolling the brush around in the paint, bringing it to a nice point. And then I'm going to come over here in this lighter gray area and just do more of the same. With this gray color. All right, I think what I'm going to do, because I do need to, actually I want to, I don't know that I need to, but didn't like that mark there. I just wiped it off. I use my fingers a lot for that, again, and I wipe my hands and stuff and my brushes on my painting smock, so I recommend you have one of those. But let me kind of bust into time lapse, and I'm going to finish out with the skinny lines. You've watched me do some of that here, so I'm going to move you into time lapse and get this done, and when I come back, we'll move on. We'll paint our big tree and our foreground, and again, this painting kind of goes pretty quickly, so I'll be right back with you. All right, welcome back to real time. You saw me in time lapse kind of finish this and just have lots and lots of lines and shapes, and you could go on and on and on and spend a lot of time doing that. But I'm pretty happy with where we are. So let me bring the original here, kind of show you what we're going to do. We're going to go right into black, and I'm going to go back to the 3/4 inch brush, go into black, and I'm going to paint this big tree here along with a couple of other, so you can see I've got like 5 or so right toward the center here that I'm going to pull down a few of those and making them bigger and darker will make them feel like they're more in front of all of this other stuff. So that's what we're going for. And then once we do the tree, I'm going to move on and show you how to do the path and the bushes in the front. And then we have to let everything dry, and then we're going to glaze some color. So a little bit of work to do yet, but we're moving along, and I hope you're enjoying this forest path painting. So here I go. Got my 3/4 inch brush, a little bit of water into the black. And you want these, again, to be a little bigger, kind of give them the impression, and we're making them darker, of course, but darker and bigger will make them seem like they're closer to us. So here we go. I'm just going to work on my big tree trunk here. And I'm kind of going to bounce my brush a little bit so that I don't end up with a shape that's just a straight line. I just don't want to do that. Just kind of make it look a little more interesting. And if you want it fatter, you could come in and I'm going to give this kind of a forked shape. So that's one side of the trunk. I'm going to bring another one down and kind of have it enhance and show this area here where our main light is. So I'm going to go way over here. Kind of like that. Again, you do your shape and size and all that however you want. That's just what I want to do, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to make my trunk a little bit wider here. If it's got this much stuff up top, it's going to have a pretty decent sized trunk to hold all that up. So there's that. Again, I'm in straight black here. And we can have just a few of the branches kind of coming off there. Again, the shape can be whatever you want it to be. I do recommend you kind of do that bouncy thing with your brush if you can do that. That'll just give a little more of an interesting shape to your branches in your tree there. Again, you have to keep in mind that the tree is going to be thinner here and thicker here as you come down. So keep that in mind as you're painting. And how I'm doing that is I'm starting here with very little pressure. I'm just applying more pressure with the brush as I come down. And again, there's going to be all kinds of branches on this guy too. And you can be as detailed as you want. I think I'm going to put another a little bit smaller tree, but I'm just going to kind of come through here with another tree here, just to kind of give us a little bit of balance. Maybe you see me skipping, that'll just add some interest. Again, a little bit of interest to the painting. We can do the same thing here. Bring a couple of these. We want this guy here to be the dominant one, but we could bring some of these darker trees in here. And again, just some limbs and branches, all that kind of stuff. The more I think the more the better on that. So any of this stuff that you want to, and I'm just putting lines here to indicate branches and limbs and all of that. So you can get as detailed and as carried away as you want on here. Again, take this, make it your own, do what you want with it. And you could even go back if you wanted with your liner brush and pull some of these thinner lines. I don't think I'm going to do that just for the sake of time and the video here, just trying to show you everything that I want to try to accomplish here. You can kind of take this and run with it and make it your own. I think the next thing I'm going to do, and again I'm just staying with the black, is I'm going to paint in the path. And for the path, you want to make strokes. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch brush still, but you want to make strokes that stay with, they want to stay parallel with the bottom of the canvas. So I'm going to start, and the path's going to be skinny as it goes back through here, and then as it winds around to this corner here, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and wider, and that'll give the impression that it's getting closer to us. And we'll probably even put some of the shades of gray back through there, but the first thing I think I'm going to do is just paint it black, and I'm just going to start kind of off to the side of this tree, this big tree here, and you could really make this however you want. You can see how my strokes here are staying parallel to the top and the bottom of the canvas. And again, just water to make the paint flow. You can even turn your brush down in here on the flat side this way. We're going to have big bushes over here, so that part is not extremely important that we get that. I am going to add, I think, a little bit of the dark gray, just so we get a little variety in here. And it'll mix itself in with the paint that's on the canvas already, but that'll give the impression there that it's, you won't have black on black, so it'll give the impression that it's kind of some dirt there. And then as I go back, I'm going to take some of the lighter gray color and again this will blend in because the paint's still wet, but there you can see with the lighter gray color there, and then coming down into the darker paint that becomes a little more believable as being a pathway there. Okay. Playing a little bit here with the path, get a little more how I want it to look. Okay. You see me there, I'm just going back and kind of dragging the tree over the edge of the path there, and I'm just using the black for that again. The black that we use for our tree, and just kind of giving that a little more, kind of seep the path a little bit. Can you see that? Hopefully you can. All right, I'm going to rinse just in my bowl here. Again, I'm not cleaning the brush, just getting some of that black paint out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this area here, kind of give us some foreground brush. And I'm going to start with the white. Again, we're going to use our shades of gray. So I'm going to start with the white, go the lighter gray, the darker gray. And this, you could be as texture happy and free, feel free to put as much texture in this as you want. We're going to do that both here as well as this little area kind of at the base of this tree, and that'll kind of help settle all of this stuff here. So I recommend that you don't hold the brush like a pencil like this. I recommend you hold back on the brush like this and paint with the face of the brush, the bristles, the front of the brush here, and paint this way, and that'll give you some nice effects for the brush that we're trying to get. So here I'll show you that a little bit, and you just kind of have to jump in and start here. You can spin the brush all around if you want some skinnier marks here. You can definitely make that happen along the top, and then as you come down, kind of spin your brush. You don't want to cover up all of your path. You want to kind of know that there's a path there. But this will kind of help settle down this corner a little bit. And again, just kind of random. With the brush strokes and shapes and all of that. So I've got that top part in the white. I'm going to go to my lighter gray color. And I'm not even going to clean the brush at this point. So this will just mix all of this color together and overlap the shades. Overlap your shades of gray there. The idea, you just want to get darker as you come to the corner. You want to get darker and darker, okay? But you can definitely overlap a lot of this up in here, just so you get some variation of color. Okay. And then into the darker gray color down here. And again, you notice I did not try to get any of that out of the brush. So just kind of what they call modeling, is just mixture of color. We're just modeling all of this color together. And you don't want to blend. I'm not blending. I'm touching with the brush and lifting. If you can see that or not, but I hope you can. So just fill in this corner here. And I can use the flat side of the brush, the side of the brush, and then even into the black right down in the corner here to mix in and make even a darker gray if we wanted to do that. See how we have this gradated value, these shades of gray. And that's all you're looking for there. Now I am going to kind of rinse some of that paint out of my brush, because we're going to go and do a similar thing over in here. Probably won't make it quite as bright, but we're going to do a similar thing. So I'm going to take, I think, some of the white and some of this gray, kind of make an even duller gray here. And then starting really at the base of this tree, kind of working across here. And I'm using the corner of the brush back here, using this what they call the chisel edge of the brush. And just kind of, again, random shapes. And that's all of that white that I'm going to put in there. I'm going to go into the lighter gray color. And really I'm going to let these overlap here. I don't want as pronounced of a white section here, so I am going to cover a little more of that, and then into the darker gray. And again, to just overlap. And what this will do, you make kind of look a little comma stroke at the bottom there. It will kind of seat. Kind of seat your path. So once you get all your color blended here, you come back with, get just a touch more, make it a little bit darker. And then right at the base, whoop, probably too much there. Oh, no, I think it's all right. And again, just using the chisel corner of the brush, I'm going to make kind of a comma type stroke. And what that'll do is it'll help settle this path, kind of make it look a little bit flatter, kind of seat that tree a little bit. All right, you can use your finger there, do a little blending out into the path, kind of help settle things a little bit. And that's the black and white part of the painting done. So I'm going to pause you real quick. I need to pull the blow dryer. You'll need to do the same thing. We can't go on until this is absolutely, totally dry. And I'm going to decide which colors I'm going to use for my glaze, and you need to think about that as well. I've showed you, let me grab the paintings again. I showed you a couple of examples here. And so you can decide what you want to do as far as colors. If you're doing this to hang somewhere, give to somebody or something like that, maybe you have some colors in mind. Sorry, just trying to set these off to the side here. But I'm going to pause you. I'm going to take the blow dryer, get this really dry. Where I put this on thick, it's going to take a few minutes longer to dry than normal. So make sure that your painting is totally dry before we move on. Think about what colors you want to glaze with, and what I'm going to use to glaze this painting with. I've got a glazing, what they call a glazing medium, and it's made by Golden, and it's called Gloss Glazing Liquid, and that's the one I like to use. You can use pretty much anything. You can even thin down the acrylics with water and glaze that way. There are lots of people who are kind of purists, if you want to call them that, don't add mediums to their paints, but I don't have a problem with that, so I'm going to be using the glazing medium. But I'm going to get this dry, pull out the colors that I'm going to use, and then I will be back with you in just a few minutes. Okay, I'm back with you, and I've taken some time and I've made sure that this is extremely dry. You don't want any of this under painting to be wet when you're getting ready to do the glazing part. And I think what I've chosen to do is I picked, again, I hope you picked your colors that you want to glaze with. Again, to bring the examples up here, you can pretty much do anything that you want. Blues and purples and greens and reds if you wanted. Any of that kind of stuff, of course, will work. The thing to keep in mind as you're glazing, the colors as they overlap, they will become what the colors are when they mix, if that makes any sense to you. So let's say, for example, I'm glazing with yellow, and then I come back over and glaze, and I hit over the top of that with blue. Those two colors make green, so that's what you're going to see. That's how the glazing works with the acrylics. But I love to glaze color. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm just going to take some of my glazing medium and just put that out on the... I've just got a little paper plate here, this little 6-inch plate. And then for my colors, I've got two different greens. I've got a yellow green. I can show them to you here. And I've just, these little, they call them disposable, but you get them at the grocery store and you're supposed to keep stuff in them. I put paint in them and then put the lids on them, and the paints last a really long time in there. But I've got a yellow green, and then I've got a dark green, and then I've got two different kinds of brown. I got a dark brown and kind of a reddish brown color. And those are the colors I'm going to use to glaze. Again, you can glaze with whatever colors that you choose. And so how this works is you want to keep this somewhat thin. So I've got the glazing medium on here. And then take a little bit of the color, and I'm going to start with the dark brown color. Kind of put that up here. Can you see that? And then I'll put the glazing medium in with it, and it'll really thin it down. The other thing I like about the glazing medium is it gives a nice sheen to the painting. And so I've got this, here's this dark brown color, and it's burnt umber, if you're wondering, that color. And then you can kind of put that wherever you want. So you could come in and say, okay, I want the base of this corner to have some of that dark brown color. I want this area here to have some of that dark brown color. Put a little more of the brown in, and I could come down and say, okay, I want the bottom of my path. And I'm just mixing the glazing medium with the brown here on my canvas. And again, if you have a paper towel handy and you get a spot that you don't want the brown, like on the edge of that white there, you can just wipe it off. You have this also slows down the drying time of the acrylic paint, so you end up with time to work here. I think I'm going to do the entire path in this brown color. And again, this is just a glaze. So yeah, I hope you guys play around with the different colors. You could do multiple of these and do them all in different colors. So I'm going to go and just add a little bit right into that same mix, that reddish brown, the burnt sienna. So burnt umber and burnt sienna are my two browns. And then I'm just going to come in here and I think add some of that brown color in and around here. And again, how you do that is entirely up to you. A little more of the glazing medium just so it flows. Basically use the glazing medium similar to like you would use water. I get a little bit of that on my big tree here. Got a little bit there that I don't want on the edge of that white. So again, just a damp paper towel that comes right off. So I'm going to mix the two browns together, a little bit of each of the light brown, lighter brown, reddish brown, burnt sienna, burnt umber, mixing those two together. And I think I'm going to cut that a little bit thick. Kind of see there, I just wiped a little bit of that off. I need more of the glazing medium in there. You do want it to be relatively thin when you put it on. So again, in and around some of this. Painting in the direction also of the way some of this stuff is painted. So these strokes are more vertical, so that's how I'm painting it with the glazing medium and the paint. And this glazing medium itself just can make a nice finish. I sometimes will put that, actually a lot of times I'll put that over as just a finishing coat on my paintings. Alright, I'm going to wipe a little bit of that off because I want this to be more of the bright color there, so get rid of that. Alright, so let's see, what am I going to do now? I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into just kind of rinse a little bit of that brown color out of my brush, and I think I'm going to go into the dark green, and it's a Hooker's green if you want to know the exact color. And again, I'm just mixing in the glazing medium very thin. You definitely want to be able to see through it. If you can't see through it on your plate, then you're not going to see through it, or on your canvas, whatever you're mixing on. If you can't see through it here, you're definitely not going to see through it up there. So I'm going to bring some of this and let these glazes overlap a little bit. Bring some of that green color like so. And then on the very top there, I've got this yellow green. It's a very, I hope you can see that, it's a very bright, very, very bright yellow green. And I'm going to bring that on the top here, where that white color is, or that white underpainting. And I'm going to put the yellow green over that and kind of let it come down and mix in with the layers below. All right. I hope you're enjoying this painting. I'm hoping you're having fun and just playing around with colors. I just decided to do something a little bit different with my colors here. Again, kind of the same thing. Get into the darker green here. Put some of that darker green at the base of that. And then back into the bright yellow green, and bring the yellow green like that. Right. So that's a fun way to do that. I think what I'm going to do in the brightest part of where our light is, which is right here, I'm just going to use this yellow-green color. Again, that's just because what I want to do. You do yours the way you want to do it. I'm going to use this yellow-green color. And again, a lot of the glazing medium mixed in with it. And I'm going to let that overlap my tree, the edge of my tree a little bit. You can kind of see some of the, make it seem like there's light coming through there. Now, I'm going to go back to the darker green and kind of mix in with that. I'm just mixing the darker green into that yellow green. And then I'm going to come up to the outside of that. Again, the color is entirely up to you. This is what I've chosen to do. All right, and then on the outside of that, I'm going to go back. I'm going to rinse some of that yellow green out of my brush and go into the straight hooker's green, the dark green. Glazing medium and the dark green. Just keep working my way out. You can see that there. And I'm kind of using an X-type stroke, or I guess it doesn't really, stroke doesn't really matter, I guess, with this. So again, the dark green. Okay. And then to finish it out, I'm going to go back to my browns. So rinse a little bit. Back first with my burnt sienna. I may have to get out a little more of the glazing medium, but try this first with the burnt sienna. Yep, gonna have to get some more. There we go. You got to make sure to use plenty of the glazing medium, or the paint starts covering up a little bit too much there. I got a little thick there, so basically what I'm doing is just dragging my brush back across. You could also take a paper towel if you want it, but just dragging my brush back across, wiping it on the edge of the plate, and then going back and blending. And I think that's working pretty well. More of that color over here. And you kind of want to make sure you hit all of your canvas so that it gets covered with the glazing medium. And then on the last part, I'm going to go back into the dark brown there. Mix just some of the dark brown Some more of the glazing medium on top of that. Pin it down really nicely. Not too much on my brush, just a nice. And I'm going to just darken up this edge up here a little bit, down the side just a touch. And it will take this, with putting the glazing medium on here, will take it a little bit longer to dry because it does extend the drying time of the acrylics. I'm taking some of the dark and just kind of painting in this big tree as well, kind of give it a little bit of color. And then along here on this edge where I hadn't painted yet, up in this corner and along this edge, and again, you could use any color that you want to do this. I kind of went with more earthy tones there, but you could definitely go with different stuff if you wanted. Again, take this, make it your own, do whatever you want with it. That's why it's called art, because you can do what you want. And I'm going to call that one done. That is Forest Path. So thanks for following along. I hope you did paint along with me and enjoy this. If you did, please comment, click a thumbs up, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. And I'll be back with you again very soon with another episode of Paint with Jim. Thanks for watching.